This is why, when these contemporary favorites of yours already become responsible beings, everything newly seen and newly heard is perceived by them of its own accord automatically, without the participation of any effort whatsoever on the part of their essence functions, and without at all evoking in them, as I've already said, the being need itself of sensing and understanding everything proceeding within them as well as without. In a word, they are satisfied with that alone, which someone once consciously or unconsciously put into them. I hope, my dear boy, that after all I've now told you, it will by itself become clear to you why, just among the three-brained beings of other groupings on your planet, data as regards the beings of the separate grouping which exists there under the name of France has been crystallized for such an opinion not corresponding to reality. However this may be, yet for the ordinary beings of this France, it was a great misfortune that the contemporary three-brained beings there of other separate groupings selected for their what are called cultured manifestations the capital of that community. At any rate, I personally pity with all my essence the ordinary beings of this community, that their capital, even though only one definite part of it, has become to be considered the contemporary center of culture for that whole planet. One must simply even be astonished that the majority of beings of the community France could, although without the participation of their consciousness, nevertheless preserve in their presences those data for the two being impulses on which objective being morality is chiefly based, and which are called patriarchality, that is, love of family, and organic shame, in spite of the fact that they exist in the sphere of conditions of ordinary being existence there, which have now become quite abnormal thanks to the fact that their capital, as I've already told you, has, to their misfortune, begun to be considered, and really is, the contemporary chief center of culture for the whole of that ill-fated planet. Owing to all this, in this contemporary center of the whole planet, as it had for a long time been the practice, those beings rush and flock from the whole planet who have completely given themselves up to the evil God reigning there, already without limit inside each of them, namely to that evil God who became their ideal, and the conception of whom is very well expressed in the words, to attain to a complete absence of the need for being effort, and for every essence anxiety of whatever kind it may be. And coming here to France, they must of course have, consciously or unconsciously, a corresponding harmful influence on the beings of the whole community. How great a misfortune it is for the ordinary beings of that France that the contemporary center of culture should lie within their community. You will well understand, my boy, if I tell you about one of the consequences of this. I learned about it thanks to that information which was communicated to me in one of the latest etherograms concerning the three-centered beings of that planet of yours. It is necessary to tell you that it had already become in general customary that when beings from the whole of the planet, who have already completely given themselves up to their, as I said, inner evil God, flock to this chief center of culture, then these beings, among other of their maleficent actions, further do this. They occupy themselves out of idleness, in order to satisfy their whims, with devising new forms of manifestations of their hasnamussioning, or as is said there, with new fashions, and spread them from there over the whole of the planet. This Hasnamussian usage, that of devising new fashions, existed in former civilizations also, During the Tikliamishyan civilization, it existed under the name of Adiat, and at the time of Babylon under the name of Haidia. Adiat, Haidia, or fashions, consist in this. The beings devise various new means of being manifestation in ordinary existence, and means for changing and disguising the reality of one's appearance. Adiat, Haidia, or fashions, are like our customs for daily being existence, which are established for the daily use of the three-brained beings for the alleviation of inevitable exterior conditions independent of beings, and which usually gradually enter everywhere into the daily use of beings as a necessary need, essential for them. These said contemporary customs or fashions of theirs are, firstly, only temporary, and thus serve for the satisfaction only of the personal insignificant aims of these present and future Hasnamasses, which become phenomenally abnormal and trivially egoistic. And secondly, they are neither more nor less than the results of automatic reason, based on that relative understanding which generally flows from the abnormally established conditions there of ordinary being existence. Thus, in this same city, Paris, about 1.5 of their centuries ago, several of these Hasnamussian candidates invented that the beings of the female sex there should go about with their hair cut. And this maleficent invention of theirs began to spread like wildfire by ways and means already established there. But, as at that period, in the beings of the female sex of that community, France, the feelings of morality and patriarchality were still very strong. They did not adopt that maleficent invention. But the beings of the female sex of the communities called England and America did adopt it and began to cut their hair. Moreover, as the beings of the female sex of both these communities there began voluntarily to deprive themselves of that part of themselves which is adapted also by great nature for certain exchanges of cosmic substances, nature did not fail to react and began to produce corresponding results, which will certainly take the forms, as had already occurred twice on this planet, the first time in the country Uniano, now Kafiristan, where there appeared what are called Amazons, and the second time in ancient Greece, where there was created the religion of the poetess Sappho. And while in these two contemporary communities, namely in the community England and in the community America, the cutting of women's hair has already produced, in the first case, suffragettes, and in the second, what are called Christian scientists and theosophists. And moreover, when this Hasnamussian fashion of cutting the hair of beings of the female sex became universally spread, as you will learn from the continuation of my tale, a proportionate increase was everywhere noticed, as I was informed by the etherogram I received, in the number of the illnesses of these unfortunate beings of the female sex, which they call women's diseases, namely various sorts of venereal inflammations of the sexual organs, such as vaginitis, uteritis, ovaritis, and what they call cancer. And so, my boy, although this same fashion, the cutting of the hair of the beings of the female sex, invented in this Paris itself by beings with Hasnamussian properties, was not then in the beginning implanted in this same community, France. Yet, owing to their capital being the collected place for the beings with Hasnamussian properties from other countries who continue to persist in this maleficent invention, these latter have ultimately succeeded in implanting it, and the beings of the female sex, there in France also, likewise have begun to cut their hair. And at the present time, this cutting of their hair is in full